Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 2, Episode 18. Today is Sunday, April the 26th, 2015. My name is Graham Perro. With me today are Tyler Fitch and Melissa Daphne. We have our Q&A app running on Google+. If you were there and watching live, give some questions or some comments and we'll get to them during the show. You can also reach us at Twitter or on Twitter at Lax Podcast, and we will get to your tweets at some point during the show as well. Lots to talk about this week. Few bits of news just relating to the playoffs, which I'll cover in a sec. We're also going to go through our major award winners, our picks for the major awards, the MVP and Rookie of the Year, and so on. And a few games to talk about, and then we'll look at our predictions for this past weekend as well as next weekend. Starting off, the playoff picture is a little more set now in that we know 5 of the 6 teams that will make the playoffs. Toronto and Rochester clinched a couple of weeks ago. The third team in the East is now Buffalo, thanks to their win on Friday night and then their win today and New England's loss. They have clinched third spot. I don't believe they can make second. I believe first and second are between Toronto and Rochester, and that's still to be decided next week. If Toronto wins or Rochester loses, Toronto's in first, and I believe they're first overall. If neither of those things happen, then Rochester is first in the East, Toronto is second, and I believe in that case Edmonton still needs to win their game next weekend in order for them to clinch first overall, otherwise it would be the Eastern team. In the West, we obviously have Edmonton and Colorado already in, and the last spot goes to either Vancouver or Calgary. Can it get any better than this? The last 2 teams out of the playoffs playing each other in the last game of the regular season. Winner gets in the playoffs, loser goes home. That should be a pretty awesome game, and I am looking forward to that one. So that's the way the playoffs are set up now. So let's get on to the fun stuff, the major awards. So what I'm going to do, we'll go through each of the awards. We went through MVP, Rookie of the Year, Goalie of the Year, Defender, Transition, Coach, and GM. So what we'll do is go through each of those awards. Each of the 3 of us will give our pick, and if you want to expand on why, then that's good. We don't want to take up 3 hours talking about this, though we probably could. So we'll try and get through it reasonably quickly, and we'll alternate who goes first, just so it's not the same order all the time. So MVP, I'll start off. My MVP for the 2015 season is Sean Evans from the Calgary Roughnecks. In a year where the Roughnecks, well, obviously they started really slow. They started 0-6. Have come on pretty well since then. They're still fighting for a playoff spot. And a lot of that is thanks to Sean Evans. He's set a record for scoring, and the season isn't even over yet. His numbers are amazing. Not much more to say. He's out there working his butt off all the time. Games where Calgary's losing in the last 2 minutes, he's still out there working just as hard as he was in the beginning of the first quarter. He works his tail off. He's my MVP for the year. Close number 2 would be Mark Matthews. He had, I don't want to call it a breakout season because it's not like we didn't know he was capable of this, but he blew away the Edmonton Rush scoring record. I believe it was 78 or 79 or something, and Matthews is over 100 points now. So I would put Matthews at second. Tyler, what do you think?
I have a hard time throwing this to Sean Evans on a team that was underperforming so much. I mean, he's a great individual. It's very tricky. But I went with Mark Matthews as he's leading arguably the best team in the league. So he's kind of quiet about it. He doesn't go on and do all sorts of interviews or get lots of press talking about his season, but he's having his career season for him, points-wise, leading a great team. I'm picking Mark Matthews as the MVP right now. What do you think, Melissa?
I went with Sean Evans as well, and a big part of that is the fact he broke a record on an 0-6 team, and you got to admit he's one of the biggest reasons that they're probably even in contention for the playoffs right now. So while I agree that it's kind of hard to give it to somebody who, their team hasn't been doing well, he obviously has, and without them, Calgary might be in a completely different situation right now. So to me, that just makes him stand out. I agree that Mark Matthews would be a very close second and would definitely be a good option. He's very strong. I really like the way he plays the game. I like what you hear about him off the floor. But to me, the fact Sean Evans broke the scoring record this quickly after John Grant Jr. did on a losing team, essentially, it speaks hugely. So I have to take him.
All right. Next, we move to Rookie of the Year, and Tyler, you're going to go first on this one.
All right. For this one, I'm looking at Ben McIntosh up in Edmonton. He's had a great season. Thankfully, he has not surpassed Reese Dutch's rookie scoring record, even with the extra games. Still got one more game to put up. I think he'd need 13 points. So technically possible. I think the all-time record in a game is 17 by Steinhaus, something outrageous like that. But he's the leader of the pack. Jeremy Noble's coming on halfway through the season would be very interesting. He's been very productive, but he didn't play the whole season. There's no way I could see anybody in their right mind throwing votes his way. How about you, Melissa?
For Ricky, yeah, Ben McIntosh he seems like he's running away with it. So yeah, I don't have much to add to that. What about you, Graham?
Yeah, it's going to be a clean sweep. I'm going for McIntosh as well. My second place vote went to Jeremy Noble. Not that our second place votes really count for anything, but I wanted to mention that. In terms of scoring, if you look at his points per game, he is 16th in the league, ahead of people like Zach Greer and Dan Dawson and McIntosh, though just barely ahead of McIntosh, ahead of Brett Hickey, ahead of Dane Doby. So, I mean, he's in some pretty darn good company. If he had played the full season, it'd be an awfully close race between him and McIntosh, I think. But given the fact that he only played half the season, I'm not sure I could give it to him. I guess we want to give a shout out to Miles Thompson as well, who started like a house on fire. Kind of fell off near the end of the year. I wanted to take a look at his numbers actually. Where did it go? 59 points in your rookie season is really nothing to sneeze at. Yeah, I guess it looks like he averaged 3.5 points per game. A little fewer in the last few than in the first few. He had a couple of 4s and 6s in the first few. I guess he had 5 yesterday, but then a couple of 2s and a 0 in there. So you didn't hear quite as much about Thompson near the end of the season. Moving on to Goalie of the Year. Melissa, this is for you.
Yeah, this one was tough because Matt Vince and Aaron Bold are both having really good seasons, and it's really going to be a toss-up. And I looked at it since they choose these, I think, before the playoffs, or at least the playoffs aren't supposed to factor in. And looking at next week's schedule, I think Rochester faces just a little easier of a team. So I expect Matt Vince's numbers just to get that much better than Aaron Bold's, who is facing Adam Jones and John Grant Jr. and Eli McLaughlin. And so when you're going up against some of those guys, I think that might just be the tiebreaker, is that Matt Vince's numbers are just going to look a little bit better after next week. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I fear we're having Matt Vince fatigue. His average performance is great, but we just see it all the time and think, hey, that's just him doing his thing, right? But Rochester still battling for, I think, first in the East. So he's still leading a good team defensively, but I think Aaron Bold has been more impressive throughout the season, and I'm picking Aaron Bold to win this one, and I could totally see the official voters saying it's Vince because this is always what he does, and they might have a little less fatigue from it, and they can look at it more analytical than me, like, oh, just more Vince. But I'm picking Aaron Bold for a little change up here. What about you, Graham?
Yeah, I was split between the two, Vince and Bold. I eventually went for Vince, and the reason I think was numbers. I mean, both of them have obviously really impressive numbers. I think the reason I went with Vince is because he faced in about 20 fewer minutes. Now, I don't think this was the numbers I was looking on Thursday or Friday, so this doesn't include this weekend's games. But he had about 20 minutes less playing time than Bold, but faced about 70 more shots and still had a higher save percentage. Now, is that punishing Aaron Bold for having a better defense in front of him, so not allowing as many shots? Maybe. But if there was ever going to be a 1 and 1A winners of this award, this would probably be the year. But I went for Matt Vince on this one. Defender of the Year is next, and I'm up first for this one. This is a tough one. I don't know if it's a tough one for everybody, but it's certainly a tough one for me because when I'm watching a game, I'm watching the offensive players. And if I make a concerted effort to watch the defensive players, I can do that, but I generally don't. And so I mean, obviously now and again you're going to see awesome defensive plays, but I don't tend to have a really good idea of which defenders are playing well overall. So I mean, I have noticed Kyle Rubisch. It's hard not to. I have noticed Chris Corbeil. Well, I mean half of Edmonton really. So I mean, Sir Kyle, it's kind of like Matt Vince, right? If you pick Matt Vince to win Goalie of the Year, it's probably not that outrageous a pick, regardless of what happens. Same with Kyle Rubisch at this point. So I kind of went with the. I looked at the Toronto Rock because that's the team I watch the most, obviously. So I decided to pick who the best defender on the Rock was for this award, and I'm going to give that to Brock Sorensen. I think he had a great, well, I would say rookie year, first year with the Rock. Obviously, he's a big guy, but he's quick. So I mean, I don't know if he was actually listed as a transition guy, but I'm pretty sure he's a defender. But he's quick. He can make it up the floor. He can score. But I do remember watching him and seeing some pretty impressive defensive plays from Brock Sorensen. So I'm going to give it to him. Tyler, what do you think?
I was thinking about, with the smaller league, I think the Stealth have played every team, and I've watched all those games and watch all the other games that I can as well. And nobody sticks out like Kyle Rubisch does. He anchors that entire Edmonton defense, which is just phenomenal. And as you're talking about the goalies, like Vince faces more shots and shuts them down, which is a pretty good reason to win. But Bold has to do less work because of the entire defense, which is led by Rubisch. So I think you got the best defense and the best defender on the best defense, and for many years running now, and probably for many years to come, we have Kyle Rubisch leading that charge, and I'm sticking with him as my pick for Defender of the Year. What do you think, Melissa?
You know, this one was kind of tough because, and it kind of leading into transition, is sometimes the players that you think of for these two aren't classified as such, and so I don't know if they are truly considered. Because I agree, Kyle Rubisch definitely has a huge impact and should be considered, but I actually made my pick Joey Cupido, which, looking at what you guys have for transition, is a little different. And I did that because he's listed actually as a defender, not as transition. So it's like, you know, I feel like he plays more transition, so I would think of him that way, but he's listed as a defender. And he actually has 29 points on the season and 110 loose balls, and I think that's just a huge impact as a defender. So if he's being classified as a defender, I think it's him. If he's going to actually be considered for transition for this, then I would probably go with Kyle Rubisch as well. But this one was definitely a toughie because he really has a huge impact, and I think Brad Self is probably closest, and he's still several goals behind as well as several loosies, and obviously not including this weekend. But that would be my picks.
Okay. Next, we move on to transition player. Now, I didn't realize that Joey Cupido was not listed as a transition player, which I believe means he's not actually eligible for that award. Because I remember a couple of years ago, I was pushing with all the influence I have for Jesse Gamble to be considered transition player of the year because I thought he had an outstanding season. And as it turned out, the Rock listed him as a defender, so he wasn't even eligible for the award at all. And I've seen that in previous years where The Rock listed everybody as either a defender or a forward, and they had no transition players on the team at all. So nobody was eligible for the award. Anyway, transition player of the year, Tyler, you are up.
Yeah, I have no idea if this is picked based on the actual label for the runner, like you said. In my mind, it has to be Joey Cupido with the points he generated, 29 points coming out the back door and pushing the action, getting tons of goals. He's the guy that did it best this year in my mind. I kind of want to get a secondary pick just because I don't know how this works out, and my safety net would be actually Jay Thornberry. He's had an impressive season. He's making a run at the face-off win single season record, and he's very under the radar. Everybody talks about Snyder's, and we've been talking about Jeremy Thompson in the last year or two, but he's had a great year, and I think he should get some recognition for that. What do you think, Melissa, for this role?
For transition, I went with Zach Greer with 78 goals and what was it? 48 Lucy's. He's definitely having an impact there. He's just kind of standing out, but he's one of the first ones you run across listed as transition, so it really is going to depend on how they're classifying some of these guys for the awards. So I would agree. I wouldn't think of him as strong as maybe some of the other candidates, but when you look at the stats for transition guys, he just kind of comes to the top. What do you think, Graham?
My transition was also Cupido. I didn't know Zach Greer was listed as a transition guy. That sounds to me like a Jeff Shatler thing from a few years ago, where he was actually given the Transition Player of the Year award when he effectively was at forward that whole season, or the vast majority of it. Yeah, that seems weird if Greer is listed as a transition player. As far as I know, he played all forward. So I went with Cupido. Just watching him on the floor, he does what a transition player does, and he does it really well, and he does it really fast. We've talked on the show many times about how I'd love to see a race between Cupido and Jesse Gamble, and heck, throw Nick Bilic in there as well. He's a pretty quick guy. My second pick for transition was Carson Leung from Calgary. I think this is only his second season. But he always looks like really comfortable on the floor. He's quick as well. He can score. He can play defense. He can do all these things. I enjoy watching him play. So I would go with those guys. I don't think Jay Thornberry is a bad choice either. I'd be okay with him. And I took a look at the Mammoth website, and they did what The Rock did. Everybody is either a forward or a defenseman or a goalie. So they have no people specifically listed as transition players. So I'm wondering if that's going to limit Cupido's chances. Moving on to possibly some tougher ones. Coach of the Year and GM of the Year. Coach, Melissa, you can go first.
This was a toughie. I was actually kind of torn on both this and GM because Edmonton has been so strong all season, and you saw that huge impact when Derek Keenan came back, and so he was very prominent. But there was also part of me that with Calgary, the way they started the season and how they've turned it around, you definitely have to give some kudos to the coach and the general manager to actually stand behind the coach and be like, yeah, you have an 0-6 start, but I'm still going to let you keep trying. I mean, we've definitely seen coaches cut much quicker than that, especially when they didn't necessarily have a great season the year before. But I opted that I think I'm going to go with Derek Keenan for both coach, and I'm actually going to jump ahead because I have him for GM as well. And so there's not much I'm going to be able to add to the next one. So I think he's just kind of standing above, and you can really see the impact he's had, because they lost their games until he came back, and I think that speaks a lot. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, seeing Edmonton in January without Keenan and then his return is just such a radical shift that he was the difference. There was no doubt about it. And now he took them out of in the bottom of the West to best team in the league, I guess, or battling for the best team in the league. I have no doubt in my mind that he's the reason there, and he gets them ready. I mean, they come out and they know what they're doing. They come out strong even. Like, they get some quick goals. Sometimes they'll end up not holding on and pushing hard throughout the rest of the game, but they come out prepared, and that's more good coaching. So I think it's a clear choice in my mind that we have Derek Keenan as the coach of the year. What do you say, Graham?
I can't really add much more to that. My vote goes to Derek Keenan as well. Yeah, like you said, Melissa, it seemed obvious at the beginning of the year. He was out for the first couple of games. Then he came back and turned the team around almost instantly. And at the beginning of the year, I remember we all thought, okay, Calgary's 0 whatever, Edmonton's 0 whatever, and Rochester's 0 whatever. So this is going to be a really weird season. Rochester and Edmonton turned it around. Calgary did turn it around. It took them a little longer. So I guess kudos to all three of those coaches. Mike Hazen, the Rochester coach, has oddly been absent from a lot of talk about Coach of the Year, considering they've won the last 3 championships. He must be doing something right. But yeah, like you said, I got to go with Keenan for Coach of the Year as well. And moving on to GM of the Year, I can see Derek Keenan for this one as well. Obviously, he's put together an outstanding team, but I'm going to give this one posthumously to Terry Sanderson. I don't think this is a homer vote. I don't think this is the poor guy died, so let's give him the award because we respect him. I think he honestly did a really good job. I mean, he was the one that pulled the strings for the Brody Merrill deal, for getting Jeff Gilbert back, for getting Brock Sorensen in. He did all of that stuff to make the Rock a better team. He signed Brett Hickey. He did all of that stuff. They haven't really done an awful lot since the season started, other than the Garrett Billings deal, which I didn't have a problem with either. But I think Sanderson did a pretty good job of putting this team together, and the fact that they're 1 win away from clinching first place overall is a testament to how he's, I don't want to say rebuilt, but how he's put together this team. So that would be my vote. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, Sanderson did tons of work there in the summer to get them ready. Knowing that they had to fill the hole for Billings with Hickey was phenomenal. And picking up Brock Sorensen is a great trade for them. But I'm looking at Keenan. Didn't really make any moves through trades this year. He had some minor trades around like backup goalies. But his drafting has just been phenomenal. He's picking up those young forwards that are stepping in every year. I mean, it's really about this year, but look at the last couple of years. He's always got young forwards coming in, producing in the offense. And so he's picking the right people to make his team better through the drafting. And that's tricky because you don't know how these kids are going to adjust to all the travel compared to just playing around their local province. And he's doing great. So I picked Derek Keenan to be GM of the year. Who do you have, Melissa?
I have Derek Keenan. So I don't have much to add that hasn't already been said.
All right. Well, those are our picks for the awards. Mostly roughly similar, at least one or two off. But as Tyler mentioned, Tyler mentioned in our show notes. I didn't say it on the in the show, but we don't have an award to give to Brett Hickey for his amazing season. Does he qualify for MVP? Probably not. He's certainly been one of the MVPs on the Rock, As for league MVP, he's top 10, but I don't think I'd put him in the top couple. Paul Tutka on Twitter this afternoon or this morning sometime suggested a most improved player, which is, I guess, something the NBA has, and that would be a great place to reward somebody like Hickey for the season that he had. And I would suggest that Rob Hellier would probably be the winner of that award for last year. Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. What do you guys think?
I feel like maybe they had it at some point, or maybe just like Isle Indoor did something when they picked their own reward awards. But yeah, there's always a player coming back or breaking out that it was always maybe talked about but forgotten about, and it's hard to get that opportunity in such a small league. But yeah, no recognition for Brett Hickey this year is sad. It's just like we'll have to remember, oh yeah, he really did, but there'll be nothing written down about it as far as awards or plaques.
Yeah, I agree. I think they actually should have an award like this because sometimes you have a player that stands out that just doesn't quite qualify for one of the other ones. I would like to see this.
All right. Moving on to the games of the week. We had 4 games this weekend. Toronto was idle, Calgary was idle, Colorado was idle. Seems odd for 4 games and that many teams to be idle. Friday night's game, there are 3 games on Friday night. I went to the one in Buffalo and wearing my Braver Than Brave shirt to honor Tucker Williams. This was they had a fundraiser. It was a fundraiser event. So they had like the 50-50 went towards, partially towards Tucker and his foundation, as well as some local cancer charities in New York. And they had T-shirts for sale. They had lacrosse balls for sale. They had a bunch of stuff. And Sean Williams made a nice message right before the game, thanking the fans, thanking the lacrosse community. So not a dry eye in the place. The place was just silent while he was reading this message. It was a recorded thing on Jumbotron. And the whole place, other than the stupid beer vendor back in the concourse shouting out that he was selling cold beer, everybody else was silent. So that was pretty cool. And a huge standing ovation for the Williams family as they came out. The jerseys that the Bandits wore were designed by Tucker's brother Dyson, as well as Zach Toll, who's the son of Steve Toll. And the Toll and Williams families are very close, and Zach was Tucker's best friend, so they designed the jerseys. Tucker's sister Delana sang the national anthem, Canadian national anthem. So yeah, it was a nice little ceremony before the game, and then the Bandits just piled on the Stealth and won the game. Steinhaus was just on fire. And Ryan Benesh, for that matter. Steinhaus had 7 goals. Benesh had, I think, 4. They went on. It was actually a pretty close game for the first half, and much of the third as well. The Bandits got on top. The Stealth would score a couple to come back. Never got it tied. I don't think they even got it within 1. But they were always within 2 or 3. There was never a blowout until the third and the early part of the fourth, when the Bandits scored 8 in a row. Yep, 8 in a row. From 12:37 of the third to 7:47 of the fourth. So what's that? Maybe 10 minutes they scored 8 goals and just blew it wide open. The Stealth offense seemed flat to me. It seemed that they'd get up in the offensive end, pass it around randomly until somebody got open, and then fire it. Usually they weren't taking the whole 30 seconds. They were shooting it as quickly as they could, and it just didn't seem to be working. Cosmo played well. He wasn't great. He wasn't outstanding, but he didn't have to be for the most part. So those are my thoughts on the games. Tyler, did you manage to watch this one?
Yeah, we got to see Tyler Richards return for the Stealth, first time in maybe a month. I think they mentioned he was out with concussion symptoms. Not the first time he's had that happen. It was 2 or 3 years ago. He had the same thing. I think at that time he took a shot off the head. I don't know what happened this time. I imagine it's the same as an occupational hazard for a goalie. It makes me wonder, is as a technical gear thing, Tyler always wears the Cascade helmets, which are kind of like field helmets, not what the most goalies wear. They wear kind of a hockey mask, a hockey goalie helmet. And he's the only one that I see having this issue, so I kind of wonder if it's related to his helmet choice. Like, he's had this happen twice now. That's kind of a bummer. I mean, he's more comfortable with it. He's always played with it and liked it, but if that's the reason he's getting concussions and the other guys aren't, I think it proves that the other helmets are better for goalies. As far as the gameplay itself, the Bandits were great. They limited the stealth options, kind of never let the stealth in the game. Anytime the stealth would battle back and get within one, it seemed like there was a quick answer almost every time, if not every time, from the Bandits to get it back to a 2-goal lead. So all the way through the third, into the third, it was a 9-7 Bandits lead. And it's like, well, the stealth, it's 2 goals in a quarter. They can do this. They totally have a chance. And then wheels just fell off for the stealth. And Steinhaus got super hot. Benesh, they couldn't miss. He said 8 goals in a row. It was a terrible finish for the stealth. Mitch McMichael had a great game at faceoffs going against Thornbear. Thornbear's chasing that single-season faceoff record, and honestly, I thought that the Bandits would just score every time they could to get Thornbear more chances to face off and get that record. I mean, it's doubtful that's why they were doing it, but it's a happy byproduct. Like, the guy can win the faceoff record. If we score more goals, let's go score goals. But Mitch was battling him and slowing him down to he was, I don't know I didn't look at the exact numbers, but it was not a usual 60+% that we see out of Thornbear at times.
It was exactly the reverse, actually. McMichael won 60%. Thornbear won just under 40. Nick Weiss won 1. And
Yeah.
Tyler Burton lost 1. So, yeah, the stealth dominated a little bit there.
Yeah, that's not usually what happens for Thornbear this season. And it was one of the few bright spots for the stealth. One great thing for the Bandits is that fourth quarter when they pulled away, and they ended up doing it again today as well. They don't let up. Sometimes you'll see teams let up, especially like the Rush. They always seem to have a lead, and then all of a sudden it can fade away in a battle in the fourth quarter in a game that they just had under control. But the Bandits, if they get going in these fourth quarters, I don't watch a ton of their games, but I saw these last 2. They just go, and they don't care. They know that goals win games, and it's never over. And the effort they put out there to score all these goals in the fourth quarter can be very helpful come playoff time. Know that you're not going to quit when the game gets line, and you're not going to let a team back in, because you let a team back in the playoffs and it's early on, like 1-game series, it's awful. So they're well positioned if they can get a lead on somebody to have this mentality, a very killer mentality as the playoffs are approaching. That's my thoughts. Did you catch any of this, Melissa?
No, for me, viewing this weekend was very frustrating. Lots of technical difficulties. The Universal site is one of the most user-friendly sites there is, and the NLL hadn't updated the site so that it didn't go to the direct link, so I couldn't even find the game to watch. So I don't know if their live issue was fixed or not. I couldn't even find the game. And then the Edmonton one, or the one game this afternoon actually started too late for me. So I don't have anything to say, although I am surprised to see that it was as close, because I'd only seen what the score was and hadn't really looked at the score sheet yet. And it's like, wow, it actually was a pretty close game, closer than I would have expected until the fourth quarter. So kudos to Buffalo for not taking their foot off the gas pedal, I guess.
And one correction to what I said earlier, I said I knew Vancouver had gotten back close a number of times, but I didn't think it got back to within 1. and that was totally wrong. They got back to within one at least 5 times. So it was a very close game until Buffalo decided to put it away, and that 8-goal run included natural hat tricks from both Benesh and Steinhaus. So yeah, good job for them. Moving on to one of the other games on Friday night, which I saw none of because I was at the Buffalo game. New England 6, Rochester 14, and my first thought was seeing this was, well, yeah, Matt Vince had a pretty good game. No, he didn't. Matt Vince didn't even play in this game. Angus Goodleaf was the one who held the Black Wolves to 6 goals. So good job for Mr. Goodleaf. One thing I noticed in this game, Garrett Billings, 1 assist, 4 shots. That's it. Seems a little disappointing, not just for Billings, but for the whole team. I mean, New England knew this is it. They're playing for their playoff lives here. And yeah, it's pretty remote. They have 4 games left, I think, at this point, and Buffalo has 3. And Buffalo has to lose all of theirs, and New England has to win all of theirs in order for them to get in the playoffs. And that's the only scenario where they get in the playoffs. So the chances are pretty low. But they still have to put in the effort to make sure that they do whatever they can to get in there. And this is the effort they come up with. Yeah, so not too impressive for the Black Wolves there. Rochester took them out. Now, sure, you're playing the defending champs, but still, you gotta come up with more than 6 goals when you're fighting for your life. I didn't see any of the game. I didn't see any of the highlights. I didn't see anything at all. So that's really all I have on this one. Cody Jameson with 10 points. Brad Self with 3. Oh, it's okay. Jameson had 10. Joe Russell-Terrets had 6, and then a whole whack of people had 3 and 2. So not a lot of scoring from the offense. It looks like a lot of transition in there though. That's all I got. Melissa, you mentioned you didn't see any of it. Tyler, did you see this one?
No, same time as that Buffalo and Stealth game, so I only put up 1 to focus on it, and I missed this. But man, Joey Russell-Terrets is really gelling with those Nighthawks right now after moving over right at the trade deadline.
All right, third game of Friday night was Edmonton, Minnesota. And yeah, this was backup goalie day because Aaron Bold had the night off, and Tyler Carlson played this one. Held his former team to 12 goals and won that game for the Rush, so that was nice. I don't know. I didn't hear anything about why Bold had the night off. Whether it was just we're in the playoffs, we've clinched first base. Let's give some minutes to Carlson. Aaron Bold turned 30 on Wednesday, I believe it was, so maybe it was a birthday present. Don't know. But yeah, I didn't see this game either, obviously. I was going to look at the numbers. Numbers aren't that exciting. Church had 7 points, Greer had 5, Matthews had 5. So offense was spread around as the Rush tend to do. Melissa, how about this one?
No, unfortunately, I had another one that was only in all live, so I didn't get to see any of this one. But it was definitely closer than I was expecting. But knowing that the backup goalie was in the whole time may have definitely had an impact on that. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I was able to flip to this one after the Stealth game ended, and I turned on a game that was 14-7. I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to put it on so I can see what's going on here. And I didn't know exactly how we got to that point. It was only 8-7 Edmonton led at the half. Then they went on a 6-goal run in the third, 6-0 run in the third, and so that gets them up to 14-7. And then they didn't let them back in the game. They didn't let the Swarm back in the game, but Minnesota was able to battle back and make it look respectable at 16-12 when they were getting doubled up before that quarter started. And this kind of gets back to the Buffalo thing. Buffalo situation, they just were pulling away, and here we have the Rush just trying to cruise and like, all right, what are we going to do later tonight? Or I don't know what's going through their minds, but apparently not the one thing not going through their mind is, hey, let's go 6-0 again, and let's just crush these guys. And instead they don't, and that can hurt them, and it could be part of the reason they didn't win the playoffs last year. That they need to change their attitude, and like you said, Melissa, put the foot on the pedal and not let up. No brakes, all gas. Be the team that they really can be.
All right. Finally, the game today, Buffalo over New England, and Buffalo outscored their opponents, what was it, 8 yesterday and 11 today. So a pretty strong weekend for the Bandits. I didn't see this one at all. It was on TSN Go in Canada, which I can't get from my provider, and ESPN in the States, so I couldn't see that either. So I got nothing on this one other than the numbers. Banesh and Stainhouse and Dane Smith again. Keto Hill with 3 goals and 4 assists. But on the weekend, Banesh had 8 goals and 9 assists. Stainhouse had 12 and 8, and Dane Smith had 3 goals and 13 assists. They are looking awfully good at the playoffs, and if any team is to peak at this point in the season, it's a really good. I think it's a really good time to be playing your best lacrosse of the year, and it looks like the Bandits might be doing that. Honestly, as a Rock fan, I'm not sure who I want to face in the East, whether it's the Nighthawks or the Bandits, because neither of them are overly nice to the Rock in the playoffs in recent years. So I'm hoping that I'm hoping that the Rock clinch first place, get a bye in the first round, and the Bandits and the Nighthawks just beat the snot out of each other, and then the Rock will face whoever emerges from that, and then takes them out. But we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I've got nothing else on this game. Tyler, you said you saw this one?
Yes. It's very interesting to see what happened here. Both teams played yesterday, and they had to travel back to Connecticut. But Buffalo, they just continued to roll, like you said. I was happy to see Mitch Jones play today. It's the first time I've seen him play this year, but he apparently played a game a few weeks ago against Minnesota. He's a former Stealth player, and he plays college hockey, so he has to wait for that season to end before he can come out. But he had, I think, 3 goals, 2 assists today. Great outing for him. Nothing going right for New England right now. No fire in them. Very high-scoring game. 6-4 in both the first and second quarter, so 20 goals by the halftime. That was a whole bunch of points coming up from both teams, but it also meant that Buffalo was up by 4 at the half, which is a good lead to start with. Third quarter, they just pulled away. They got 5. New England came out completely flat, dominated, I don't know, but no goals, nothing to slow down Buffalo in that third quarter, so it came 17-8. And unlike Edmonton, Buffalo slowed down some, but they still won the next quarter 3-1. I mean, like you said, you don't want to face a team that's peaking like this in the playoffs. With very hard pressed to pick against them in a couple weeks when we get to that point. I don't know. Not a lot to say about this game. I noticed that in the arena, they usually have these little luxury box kind of things right down on the ice or on the rink that were all empty. In the past, I've usually seen people there. I haven't seen the attendance. Let me scroll down here. Attendance was 3,036. Not good. Not growing for them as the team would get more awareness as the season goes on. So that's kind of a bummer. A lot of Buffalo fans there. Whenever they kind of went to crowd shots, there's usually somebody wearing a Buffalo jersey. I don't know. Not too much else to add. Kind of a rough outing for New England. Thornbear, 24 for 33 on faceoffs, so 24 more towards his march on that single season record. Again, the team scoring tons of goals, giving him more chances to get those faceoffs. It just seems like in my mind that's happening, even though there's it's kind of very specific event tied to another one. I don't think that's what the team's trying to do. They're just scoring goals because they can. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
All right. Let's go to our predictions. And we had a couple of 4-0 weeks last week. So Melissa and myself went 4-0. Tyler went 3-1, with New England not pulling out the win today. So overall, I'm at 46-30. Tyler just behind at 43-33, and Melissa is still out ahead by 2 at 48-28. And please note that Melissa is 14-1 in the last 3 weeks. So good job, Melissa. Next week's games, there are 5 of them. They are the final games of the regular season. And Melissa, since you are the local expert, I will let you go first.
It's crazy to see me doing even half as good as I am this season, because it seemed like last season I couldn't pick a winner at all. So it's kind of weird. There was one or two that I actually waffled on a little bit. With Toronto and New England, there's no way I would pick New England. I think even if Toronto did nothing but use their backups, I would expect them to win that one. Same with Buffalo. It's hard for a team to be beat as often as we saw with Calgary and Edmonton a few years back. But I just don't think New England has it in them. And playing the night before and then facing Buffalo, I couldn't put my money on them. Rochester, Minnesota. Minnesota has nothing to play for. Rochester does, so I'm definitely going to pick them. Edmonton and Colorado is the one that I really waffled on a lot. I initially had Edmonton picked, but something in my gut is saying that Colorado actually has this one. So I'm going to go with that, even though mentally everything's telling me I should be picking Edmonton. Calgary and Vancouver is another hard one because they both have something to play for and they both shown some sparks. But Calgary has been playing a lot stronger, a lot more consistent lately. So I think I'm going to pick them for the win and for that final playoff spot. What about you, Tyler?
Looking at this purely from the standpoint of having a record and winning the pick'em, I picked opposite of you all completely, and except for the Edmonton, Colorado, I had no choice but to pick against Graham. But now I can pick against you because you're the one I got to catch. So that's what I have to do. So New England against Toronto and then Buffalo. The records clearly say that Toronto and Buffalo win those games, so I picked New England. Minnesota will beat Rochester because I need them to and pick them. Edmonton and Colorado, I am now going to pick Edmonton, even though until like 2 seconds ago it would say Colorado. Finally, the one pick where I'm not going opposite of what I need but so much as what I want is Vancouver. It's a great game. Last game of the regular season, winner makes the playoffs, so neither team is technically backing in the playoffs. They have a huge reason to come out and play, and Vancouver gets to play at home. I think hopefully they can translate that into some good feelings, and good energy, and a win, and we'll see Vancouver in the playoffs and Calgary packing it up for the season. Who you got coming up, Graham?
Pretty much the same as Melissa, except for one. I went with the Rock over the Black Wolves for all the reasons that Melissa said, and all the reasons that Tyler did not say. New England and Buffalo, I got to go with the Bandits on that one as well. Like I said, it looks like they're peaking right about now, playing some great lacrosse. New England is not, and I guess neither team has really anything to play for at this point. But like you said, Tyler, they're probably interested in trying to get Jay Thornberry that face-off record, which means they'll score lots of goals. And just scoring goals is fun, and they enjoy doing that, so that's what they're going to do. Rochester, Minnesota. I didn't actually look at what nights these are happening, whether some were Friday night and some were Saturday night. So if we assume that the Toronto-New England game and the Rochester-Minnesota game are at the same time, Rochester knows that if they want to clinch first place, they need to win. So that's what they're playing for. Minnesota has nothing to play for. I got to go with Rochester on that. And Edmonton, Colorado, I'm going with Edmonton. Edmonton's getting to the point similar to last season where you just go with them every week, and far more often than not, you're going to be right. Calgary, Vancouver was a tough one. Obviously, both of these guys playing for their playoffs. I got to go with the Roughnecks on this one. And I feel bad for Vancouver being obviously if this happens, they'll be the team that gets booted out of the playoffs by a team that started 0-6, which is that's got to be tough. Can Vancouver win this game? Sure they can. I can see it happening, but given, as Melissa said, the inconsistency that we've seen from the Stealth this year, and the never say die attitude from the Roughnecks that we've seen an awful lot over the years, particularly Sean Evans, I got to go with the Roughnecks. And that will do it. I guess that's it for this episode. AddictedToLacrosse.com is where you want to go for all of our old shows. If you want to get in touch with us, Twitter is probably the best way. Lax Podcast there. We're on Facebook as well at Lax Podcast. Or you can send us an email at feedback@addictedtolacrosse.com. Get us your comments and questions. We have one more show for the regular season, and then we're into the playoffs, and that will be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the playoffs this year. I guess that's it. This has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next week.